Hello, I'm Lucy and I'm a PhD student in the School of Psychology.
Hi, I'm Louise and I'm also a PhD student in the School of Psychology.
And we've been working in the Research and Innovation Office alongside Professor Wayne Morris and Jill Pye to enhance the Pgr experience of students at the University of Chester.
And we're joined by Paul Bissell today for the annual review.
Hello, my name's Paul Bissell. I'm the Professor of Public Health and I'm the Pro Vice-Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the University.
So Paul, how have you found your first couple of months at the University of Chester?
It's been great. I've really enjoyed it actually. So it's been quite exciting. I've tried to meet as many people as possible, met most of the senior staff and as many of the academic and professional services staff as possible, and of course as many of our PhD students as well. So you've both had a new post, you've taken up a new post within the research office in the last couple of months. Have you found your time? And do you want to say a bit about the PhDs that you're doing as well?
Yeah, so I'm a second year part-time PhD student, and while I'm in the School of Psychology and my research is slightly different, so I do my research with the elephants at Chester Zoo. And I'm working very closely with the elephant team, with the keepers and also with the science department to create this novel personality and welfare tool to be used with zoo-housed elephants. And I'm very much in the early stages of developing that tool, and eventually we're going to be validating it behaviourally, so with me stood there looking at the elephants, which would be quite nice. And also physiologically, so looking at the fecal samples and measuring hormone levels, etc.
Okay, my PhD couldn't be any further from Lucy's. Again, I'm also in psychology, but mine's forensic related. So I do quite a lot of work with the police, and I'm currently data collecting, and I'm looking at how the police communicate legal rights to vulnerable and non-vulnerable suspects. And these are all serious level crimes.
Really interesting, both of your PhDs, and they're both in psychology. So are there other PhD students in psychology you've got to know whilst you've been doing your PhDs?
Yes, I think we're quite lucky in psychology. We've got quite a big department. I think there's about 7 or 8 other PhD students, sort of part-time and full-time. And we've got an office where the GTAs, who are also psychology PhD students who do teaching full-time in the department, they use that as their base. And then the other psychology PhD students kind of dot in and out as and when they're on campus. And it's really nice having that community of support within psychology. And Louise and I have obviously become quite close as a result of that, as a result of having our desks next to each other.
What's been really nice about the role within the Research and Innovation Office is we've been able to branch outside of psychology and meet students from different departments. And what we're aiming to do is try and enhance that Pgr community at Chester and try and have that more of an interdisciplinary focus. So it's been really great to meet a lot of students from different departments and just see how different departments and faculties work.
Yeah, I think that's what's really great about doing a PhD is you can find out what's happening in other parts of the university and other topics that you're not aware of. So it's great that you've been able to do that. I know through the Pgr symposium that you both set up, which was really successful, there were some really excellent presentations there. So thank you for doing that. I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was quite stressful at times doing the organisation, but it was a really fantastic event. It was really well received. All of the students that presented and attended were very enthusiastic, and we've managed to build quite a nice community following that, and we've been maintaining that through regular seminars. So we do our Friday seminar series. So every Friday lunchtime at 12 o'clock, we have one student do a talk about their research. Louise and I have both done one, haven't we? And then that's a 15-minute talk followed by 15 minutes for a general chat, a couple of questions, and it's quite a nice group that go to these Friday seminar series, and we're hoping to attract some of the new Pgr students that have just started and again continue to maintain and foster that community.
Yeah, we've been working quite closely alongside Professor Wayne Morris, and what we're aiming to do is become more of a central central team for Pgr students, so they know who to approach, where to get the information from. We've been working on an academic calendar, Pgr university-wide, because we didn't want students to be siloed into their individual faculties. So with this new Pgr calendar, students from different departments can attend writing workshops, they can attend inaugural lectures, and yeah, that's all there on that Pgr calendar.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely fantastic. That's exactly what I want for our PGR students, because sometimes you don't know what's going on in other parts of the university. So having that calendar, you can attend the things that you want to go to, and if there are other interesting things on there, you can get to those as well. So I think sometimes some people say that doing a PhD is quite a lonely thing, it's quite a lonely experience, but the more we can bring people in to develop that sense of community, I think is important, and the work you're doing is absolutely central to that, I think.
So I think research and particularly knowledge exchange are terms that are used by university staff rather than students. So what do students need to know about research and knowledge exchange?
Yeah, well, I think certainly for our PhD students, they're all doing research projects, so they'll have some familiarity with research, and of course they'll have done an undergraduate degree already, and often many of them will have done a postgraduate degree too. So they'll be familiar with dissertations and doing some sort of research, but of course doing a PhD is quite different, because you've got to do at least 3 years, and you're doing rather more than 3 years for your PhDs. But that's great. You learn a set of skills, and it's those methodological skills that are absolutely key in getting a broad set of research skills that's so important. But I suspect, certainly for our PhD students, they may be less familiar with what knowledge exchange is, and lots of people struggle, I think, with what knowledge exchange is. But it's just as important as research to us, and essentially what it is us as an institution, as a university, working with external stakeholders. So, for example, businesses, local authorities, NHS organisations, all of those bodies, to work with them and try and improve what they do and transform their services. So you need to know what knowledge exchange is, but it's pretty straightforward. An example of that might be continuing professional development. The kind of public lecture series that we're aiming to put on, which I would like all of you to come to, is an example of that. So yeah, it's great. I think that's research and knowledge exchange. But just to turn it around a little bit, I'd like to know what you think students need to know about research and knowledge exchange, and what would be helpful for them.
Yeah, just building on the continuum of professional development, we think employability is an area where we perhaps need to focus. We know within the university, like careers within academia, there's quite a lot of support there. We have the talent programme, we have teaching opportunities, but what we are quite interested in is developing careers outside of academia. We did set up a panel at the Pgr Symposium where we did have a range of professionals who had got their PhD, and then they did go into careers outside of academia. So it'd be good, I think, to maybe integrate that a little bit more into our employability at the university.
Yeah, and that panel session was really well received, even though we did have several technical issues, which meant that we couldn't have all of our online panellists present. But it was an opportunity for the students in the audience to ask the people questions who were sat on the stage. For example, why did you choose to go into this career and not that? And it was a really sort of useful, albeit a last-minute exercise due to the technical difficulties. But I think, kind of linking to what Louise was saying about employability, it's also a student's place within the research community, going back to that community. And I know that the Research and Knowledge Exchange Institutes, the 3 operational Research and Knowledge Exchange Institutes that we organised and structured the symposium around, are trying to host a bunch of workshops and training sessions, and also encourage staff and students to be part of this interdisciplinary research work. But I do think encouraging PGR students a tad more would be beneficial. So prior to the symposium, a lot of PGR students that Louise and I spoke to didn't necessarily know what they were, how they could be involved, how their research would align with one of the Research and Knowledge Exchange Institutes. So perhaps thinking about having more student involvement, a student voice, a student subcommittee, so that the students do feel a little bit more integrated, and they do feel like they have that sense of belonging within one of the Research and Knowledge Exchange Institutes.
Yeah, no, I absolutely take your point, and what we've just done actually is to appoint directors to the 3 Research and Knowledge Exchange Institutes that are already set up. So Paul Kingston's running our Health and Wellbeing Institute, Tim Grady's running the Culture and Society one, and Rebecca Collins is going to be directing the Environment and Sustainability Institute. And I'd really encourage all of our PhD students and undergrad and PGT students to get involved in them, because I think there's something of relevance to all of them, and coming back to what you were saying about employability, they should be putting on, I think, and they will be putting on sessions for our students to understand what are the careers like after academia, with a particular emphasis for our PhD students, because it is a slightly different world that you'll be going into, and I'll be interested to know a bit more about what do you plan to do after your PhDs, and what areas are you interested in, and how can we sort of configure what we're doing to your particular interests?
I'll be honest, I don't really know. I originally thought when I started my PhD that I wanted to go into lecturing and teaching, and I was quite lucky to have several opportunities within the School of Psychology to lecture, to do some visiting lecturer work and also some marking, and I did really enjoy that. But also within my research at Chester Zoo, I've been quite integrated within the science team at the zoo, and I'm based there 3 days a week when I do my behavioural observations and my work there. So I've seen that side as well, and I quite like it. So I don't quite know which avenue I'm going to go into, and I think, like Louise, you've done the talent programme, so I think that'll probably be my next step sort of after this.
Yeah, and I'm probably pretty similar to yourself. Done quite a lot of teaching now, and I do want to stay in academia, but then with my role in the police I also like the practitioner element, and I feel like the practitioner informed research is something that I would like to pursue, and yeah, like to stay in academia.
Well, I think what a PhD does is not just give you in-depth knowledge about a particular area, and of course you've got in-depth knowledge in each of the areas you're working in. It gives you a lot of soft skills as well, doesn't it, which you can deploy in the jobs in which you're working. And I think that's what's great about the university, with its citizen-student strategy, is aiming to make sure that we build the social capital and the expertise, the lifelong learning, the holistic sense of continuing to learn throughout your career. That's really important. So it sounds like both of you haven't made your minds up yet, is that about right?
Yeah, not quite yet. I think probably towards the end of it I might decide to do something completely different, but I don't know. I think that was why we were so keen to have that careers outside of academia panel, because it's kind of assumed, I suppose, a lot of the time that PhD students will want to, at least to a certain extent, go into academia, go into lecturing, but obviously that's not always the case, and I think highlighting that a little bit more would be beneficial, whether it's another panel session or another workshop or something like that.
I can see a piece of work coming on then.
Yeah.
Okay, so by this time next year, what would you most like to have achieved in relation to student involvement in the research and knowledge exchange?
Yeah, well, I think coming back to what you said earlier really is about we need to make sure as an institution that all of our PhD students are integrated into our research and knowledge exchange institutes, and that they feel at home there and they get that real sense of belonging. One of the things that we didn't do as well in the PRES, the Postgraduate Research Experience Survey, was around research culture, and I want to make sure that our PhD students feel part of a wider research culture, and I think that's often a proxy for a sense of belonging, and both of you said you've got a real sense of belonging in psychology where you're both based. We've got to make sure that sense of belonging extends right across the university, and that you've got access to the skills, the training that you require, but also just having access to academics, professional services staff, and who can sort of make sure that your experience is positive here. So for me, it's about improving the experiences of our PhD students, but and just driving that forward over the next 2 years, and I hope working with you guys as well. So,
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Paul, very much for taking the time to talk with us today.
And thank you for joining us for this year's annual review.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed it today, so I look forward to meeting you soon.